Reflections with theologian Father James Bacik, lecturer and campus minister at the University of Toledo.
You know, that is the sense of pride that many people carry away from school. I mean, you know, it's not we had the best math department or something, you know. It's that is what people identify with. That's the reality. I guess one has to deal with that. And alumni are going to try to build it up. The people, alumni with power, influence, money are going to say, I want my school to be good. And I don't know exactly how you end up controlling that.
Joining Father Bacik in today's Reflections is Brad Rieger, a graduate student in special education at the University of Toledo. Today, Father Bacik and Mr. Rieger will be discussing the recruitment of college athletes. Now, here's Father Bacik.
Brad, I'd like to talk a bit about a question that you know firsthand, and that is the recruitment of athletes to play in colleges, universities, and their athletic programs. I know you've gone through that. I remember in a very minor way when making a visit in my senior year in high school to St. Joseph's in Rensselaer and going there and working out with their basketball players and so on, and talking to their coaches and so on. And to me, it was a thrilling kind of experience and a sort of an ego boost, I suppose. But I know you've been involved in it in other ways, and actually ended up playing basketball here at the University of Toledo and so on. And so I want to tap a little bit of your experience that way. I don't know if you want to comment on that right away or whether we need sort of a larger context for it. Why don't you just say a little bit about it, and then let me try to put the whole thing in a larger framework.
Okay, why don't I just tell you a little bit. I'm from St. Clair Shores, Michigan, which is about an hour and a half from Toledo. It's right above Detroit. And when I was in high school, my senior year, I was recruited I had letters of interest from about 75 to 100 colleges. And University of Toledo was one of the first colleges to come around and to offer me a scholarship. And I ended up taking it because I was really impressed with the soundness of the basketball program and the soundness of the education, the school in general. It just very, very much impressed me. So the recruiting was pretty quick and over quick for me because I liked Toledo first. My first initial impressions were very good. If I had a chance to do it again, I probably would have taken more time and you're allowed 6 visits to various universities. I probably would have taken more time to go use those other visits, but that's all hindsight, and I was happy with my choice, University of Toledo. And maybe we can get more into that after. Well,
but maybe we stay with that a while. So the general program is now that you can make 6 visits.
Right.
That's all paid for by the university.
Right.
And when you go there, what happens?
You go there, and usually a lot of times it's overnight or for a weekend, and a lot of times they put you up with a player that's already in the program. They'd put you with a junior or senior, and you stay overnight with them, and the coaches have you for a time, official time, that they show you around campus, and they show you academic things, and they introduce you to academic people, and of course they show you the facilities you would be playing in, whether it be the basketball arena and just the various official parts of college life. The other players might show you the unofficial type of things of college life. There'll be a lot of partying, socializing, to give you this feeling of this is how it's always like. It's one big party and a good time, and people are good here, and we want you to be a part of our team and community. And so there's an official and unofficial side, and but most of the time you're put up with another player, and you're assigned, the player's assigned to you, and they try to introduce you to as many players as they can. And usually it's a team-wide recruitment. All the coaches say, hey, we have a new recruit come in, will you please say something to him, make him feel at home, and put your pitch in. So it's it's just a big blitz, promotional blitz on all fronts, and all of it's good. Not too many negative things which is one of the things about recruitment that I have problem with. Nothing's ever negative is really said about what you're going to get involved with, but that's another.
I see. And so that even the most sought-after athletes are supposedly under the same restrictions. They can only go to 6 schools on this kind of visits.
Right. Yeah.
And it's supposedly tightly controlled. I mean, they can't be giving them extra money and all of this, but we know abuses occur and so on. But I mean, that is the general framework. They can go 6 times, and that you're taken to the school. They pay for your transportation. They pay for your meals while you're there.
And lodging, but that's it.
Yeah.
You can't provide a Ferraro to drive around.
Yeah, right. So it's there are some restrictions on it. Well, I guess to go back to whatever context we need to put this in is that that recruitment of athletes is important to schools. And it has been for a long time. It's the whole history of athletics in the United States at the collegiate level. And so even before the turn of the century, colleges and universities found out that football, for example, was a drawing card, that it made an impact on the public, that they were providing sports entertainment for the larger community that had nothing to do with the university or the college, and that therefore they saw this as a way of gaining publicity for themselves, of getting a name for themselves. I mean, all one has to do is think about Notre Dame and Knute Rockne and how that put them on the map and how brought in dollars to that university and has made it an important place, given them the alumni loyalty and all of that. I mean, that stands as a prime example in my mind of the way a football program has put a very small school on the map, and people associate Notre Dame with their great football teams and so on. But that generally, even in the Ivy League schools, they found that early on that was a way of doing something for the larger community and of enhancing their own reputation. Of course, what has happened is that with the land-grant colleges and so on, and the state universities developing, they didn't have the kind of restraints that the Ivy League schools had. They always had the idea, well, we have to have academically sound people here. We got to build up our graduate programs. We got to have a really first-class educational institution going. But for the state universities, which were bringing in students who were not always the best anyway, the athletic program became the way of getting this reputation. And, of course, in our own time, it becomes the way of getting the big bucks, which comes through the TV contracts. And the revenue-producing athletic programs are extremely important to these schools. And they pay for all of the other sports that are so expensive and don't draw any dollars in. People aren't paying to see them. And so that what is happening is, as I see it today, is we've got a couple of problems that universities, colleges face. One is declining enrollments, that everyone's worried about attracting students, and also budgetary cuts, so that the funding from the state and other institutions is being cut back. So athletics becomes really important for the Division I schools, as we call it, the major universities, those same 10 schools plus that you see in the top ratings for the football schools every year. It becomes really important for them to recruit the best athletes, to build up the program so that they fill the stadiums, so that the money's coming in, and so that they have a good reputation, and it enhances their enrollment. So what actually has happened is that football has become a major instrument of publicity for these institutions, a way of selling themselves. And there's a whole history to it. I've just tried to sketch it out, but I mean, that is what has happened. Thus, the great emphasis on recruiting among the Division I schools, at least.
See, that's what all you talk about. It makes sports very complex. And as I relate back to my high school days, basketball to me back then was working hard I went to a Catholic high school, and there was a lot of camaraderie with teammates, and we never won any state championships, and we were never real perennial powers, but we were a good team, but we won and lost together. We worked hard, and it was just a good feeling about being on a team, playing basketball, good feeling about the sport, good feeling about teammates, good feeling about school. It brought the school together, but it was, we didn't, like I said, we weren't number one in the state, but it was just a good feeling, I felt good about the sport of basketball, and there's a sense of goodness, and of course there were times of trouble and rough spots, but in general, coming from high school, I had a very positive attitude towards a good feeling towards sports.
And I think that high school principals or teachers will tell you that the sports program in high school, is really helpful to the mood in the school, to building up the climate. Again, I suppose especially when the teams are going well, but even for discipline problems. I mean, I remember having students who weren't doing well, great discipline problems, and then maybe a small sophomore boy made the wrestling team at the 120-pound mark and was really feeling good about himself, and suddenly he was no longer a discipline problem. Mm-hmm. So certainly good things like that would happen at that level.
But then once there's such a gap between the high school athletics and where I came from and what college athletics are all about, that it really is there's no transition phase. It goes right from a less pressurized situation to a highly intense, pressure-packed situation where values are a lot different, and they're playing hardball now,
right.
That type of thing.
It has become big business. I mean, people talk about the professionalization of the whole athletics at the college level, and so you've got the people in the academic world are often complaining because the athletic department takes on a life of its own. It's not really under the control anymore of the university as a whole. Their own big budgets. Some of these coaches make fantastic salaries. I've seen published the idea that a coach at Texas A&M makes $280,000 a year. They make more than the presidents of the universities make.
Something seems out of perspective.
Yeah,
there.
well, that's what certain people think, I mean, when they look at the scene of college athletics, they say, well, what is this all about? We got an institution that's supposed to be educating people, and here we've got this tremendous outlay of facilities. I mean, stadiums that seat 100,000 people, athletic budgets that are out of sight. You got the whole business of the teams being off by themselves and having special privileges and so on. So this is just an amazing thing that's gone on, and people have been trying to figure out how do you control this in some way, or what do you do about it. But I think what we're trying to get at, Brad, is the larger context within which we see this whole recruiting process. Some people will say, well, why are they out doing all this stuff? And of course what happens is that people end up breaking the rules with the recruitment business, so that athletes are getting money under the table, they're getting special benefits, they're getting cars, they're very often not going to classes and so on. It's interesting, but this really goes all the way back to before the turn of the century. We're not dealing with just a modern TV phenomenon. I mean, schools were involved in recruitment violations all the way back. So we have the NCAA now that tries to control this, right? I mean, they are watchdogging and make sure that recruiting is not out of line. Mm-hmm. But, some schools can't handle this. I teach out at the University of San Francisco sometime during the summers and heard their stories. They dropped basketball. The president of this Jesuit institution got up, and basketball is so big there. Bill Russell played there. They run national championships. It's a proud history, and many of the alumni give their money to that university, based on their pride in the basketball program. And he dropped the basketball program. I think they're starting it up again now, but because he said we couldn't control the alumni. He was trying to keep it straight. They didn't want any under-the-table deals. He said we simply can't control the alumni. They give these athletes money and special things and so on, and we can't stop it. And, of course, they had a case where a terrible situation where one of their athletes was charged with a particular offense and so on, and then told the story publicly of how he got all of this stuff from the alumni, and that brought it all to the fore. And so here you're seeing a president of a university saying right out in public, I can't control this situation.
That's an amazing, blunt comment, but it's very real. And versus a lot of lip service that you'll get from administrators or coaches, it really is. It was a gutsy move to end something like that. It was a positive action to correct something that needed to be corrected. Sometimes it takes something that drastic.
I heard from people talking out there that the contributions from alumni just went down, and it was said in the paper that some of the well-to-do alumni who contributed a lot just said they weren't going to give. They came right out publicly, said this. And I think what the University of San Francisco is trying to do now is clear the air and get started afresh again. And but I don't doubt that in a few years they'll be back in the big time. And as soon as you're in the big time, you're in tremendous competition to get these first-class athletes.
Right. And like I said, the recruiting that we're talking about is probably the guts of it, because if you don't get athletes, you don't have programs.
Right.
So the recruiting is one of the biggest factors of any type of college athletics. And you're dealing with coaches' livelihoods. They're not there doing it. I mean, they enjoy the sport, but it's their livelihoods. That's what supports their families. It's what's, like it's talking about $280,000. That's an awful big livelihood. And so you have a lot of other things versus just trying in high school or even some of the smaller places where you're just trying to get together a decent team and maybe instill some values of sportsmanship and going after winning, of course. But things get way out of perspective when you're dealing with people's livelihoods. People will do anything to keep their job or to stay afloat, and then you get just not only livelihood, but then you get ego involved and ambition and power, and you have a lot of factors that can really...
We certainly do. I don't know that we've said enough about the alumni factor, because that really is in the picture. And maybe not just alumni, but people who live in the city. We think of the city of Toledo here and how important the athletic programs have been over the years, and how many people support the athletic programs at the university who really aren't alumni at all, but it is a sense of pride. You know, I mean, there's a good feeling about having good teams and being able to defeat the other schools in the Mid-American Conference and so on. You know, we've got this whole situation lately, and I really don't know a lot about it. I don't know why I'm bringing it up, really, but of trying to keep the Division I status. I don't know if you've stayed up on top of all that. And, you know, the idea of even dropping a school from the whole league in order to keep the status going. One wondered about what ethics were going on there, or what sort of human...
It's like the lifeboat is too full. Kick the...
What's that?
It's like the lifeboat that's too full. Yeah, someone has to get out.
Yeah, you're going to kick somebody off. You get into some touchy ethical questions, I would think, there.
And I knew a couple of the football players at Eastern Michigan. They just the bitterness that they're like, we're never going to give up football, and we'll leave your league, and just the idea of sportsmanship and and sports as a value seems to really be losing it. And then just the idea of the football packages, the TV football packages, people, the school struggling over TV airtime because that's big bucks.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody now from a big-time school. I can't... I was out at, I think, Southern California, USC, I think. And happened to meet him on an airplane, and he was, really talking about the great thing that they were breaking away from this TV contract now that was holding them down, and these big major schools would be able to make contracts for themselves, and how they were going to get so much more money, and it was going to be great for their recruiting and everything. And I just asked him, well, what about the small schools? His whole idea is we're being held down in the number of scholarships we can give, the amount of money we can get from television, these giant football factories. And I said, well, what about, the smaller schools? I think the whole idea of the NCAA, as I got it, was in having the package was so that it would be shared in some way, and so that some schools just couldn't grab up all the bucks that are involved.
That seems to be going by the wayside, the way things... I'm not sure about legislation, what's going on, but... it seems to be what you're saying.
Yeah, they're going to be able to make their own deals.
And Michigans and Ohio States.
And, of course, the guy said to me, he says, nobody wants to watch these small schools on television. Why should they be forced to? And he's got a point, doesn't he? I mean, everybody wants to see the game of the week, the big superpowers going at one another. That's where the real interest is. But, geez, I'm much more of a mind to say the wealth has to be divided up in some way. I mean, if all this money's coming in from television, there ought to be a way that everyone shares in it. And, of course, the attendance is a big thing. That's what we're fighting in the Mid-Am, is keeping up the attendance at the games so that will help to maintain the Division I status here.
A big emphasis is on attendance, and I got the feeling when I was going through my basketball career was if we filled the stands, we were doing well. And that's... that was there, always in the back of your mind. We have 10,000 people at Centennial Hall, or there's only 7,000. Well, something must be up. Well, it's a Wednesday night, it's cold. There's always that feeling, depending on how many people were there, it somehow tied in with the team and what we're doing out there, and not versus just a sport of basketball. We're out there and 10,000 people happen to show up and watch us. That type of the emphasis on the people being there versus us.
Yeah. And of course that's the money again, the ticket sales coming in and so on. I think that in the city of Toledo the problem has very often been that people couldn't get into the games and that couldn't get the kind of seats that they wanted, and that there were a lot of people upset because of that. Again, that points to this great strength and power of the alumni and the importance of trying to satisfy them. That is the sense of pride that many people carry away from school. I mean, it's not we had the best math department or something, it's that is what people identify with. That's the reality. I guess one has to deal with that. And alumni are going to try to build it up. The people, alumni with power, influence, money are going to say, I want my school to be good. And I don't know exactly how you end up controlling that.
One of the things is just that the basketball, the Wednesday night, Saturday night, or the football, whatever, is a form of recreation. It's a form of leisure for a lot of people, and that's fine. That's great, and they want it to be like that, just to be their leisure and not to deal with a lot of the things that we're talking about here about ethics, and which is fine. But that's one of the problems when they're bombarded with so much bad news in papers. They really don't want to hear about more scandalous. It's just like I just want to go watch the game and cheer and then go grab a beer or something, which again is fine. But
you always have a marvelous sense of balance in your thinking, Brad. You are very good at bringing out the counterpoint, and that's supposed to be my role, but you do that so well. And I think that this is true. I mean, for the average person in our city, it's a marvelous entertainment. It's a way to identify with something that's reasonably good. It's an outlet. It's a talking point. It's fun to go to the games. And it's an innocent kind of recreation. And it's getting away from the rat race for a while and all of the complex problems. And games and sports are terrific for that. And that's the vast majority of people. And I think when we're talking about this violations and so on, it's usually dealing with with these major football factories and so on, I think, which are in even a greater pressurized situation to try to come through and to produce the winners. Somehow I'm flashing on the basketball scandals we had at the University of Toledo as I was growing up, and my dominant remembrance of that was I used to go to all those games and watch those players, and they were tremendous teams, and looked up to them in a way. And then the scandals came, and found out that there was the betting and the shaving of points and so on. It was very hard for us at the University of Toledo to deal with, and for me as a youngster. But I remember my father's really positive reactions to that, of teaching me the lessons of not putting those people down. He was all for giving them another chance and reminding me of the context and the pressure that they were put under. And that's one of the great formative influences on me. I think my father's reaction to those basketball scandals, that he saw it as as a question of forgiveness and of perspective and of realizing the difficulties these people had and of trying to build the program back up again. So I mean, there's all kind of positive, good sides, I think, that we ought to keep in mind with this. Well, what are we going to do about this recruit? So what we've tried to do, I guess, is see the context of it. I mean, everyone has to recruit. We've been in Division I schools, football, factories, powers, and so on. They've got to do it. But the small schools try to recruit as well. Findlay College, Defiance, in our own area, they have a limited number of scholarships that they can give, and having good teams, and so it's important to their student bodies also. I'm sure that is less pressurized and so on. Did you visit any small campuses that way? Like
I said, I just visited University of Toledo. I was so impressed, I signed. And I probably, like I said earlier, that I would take a little bit more time and visit other places.
But they have to go through this as well, and I think that I'm sure that you don't have a big bucks exchanging hand under the table and so on, but they try to make this good impression. Football and basketball programs are important to them, I suppose, in building up student interest and so on. And I think the marvelous football teams Findlay College had there for a number of years, and that's I remember reading. I'd look at the sports page right away to see how Findlay College is doing.
Another unique thing about college athletics is the Ivy League. Still, you mentioned the Ivy League earlier. They don't give college athletic scholarships. They develop packages for athletes, which turn into scholarships in a sense. Financial aid and work studies and everything. But they try to keep the semblance of we're here for for school and you happen to be playing athletics, that type of. But I wonder how that is even in Ivy League. I am not that familiar with.
Well, I mean, in the reading I've done about it is that there really are academic standards that they have to meet, and they just can't get in there or stay in there if they don't reach those standards. So as far as I know, in those schools, they don't just push athletes through as they do in many other places. There's certain standards. But on the other hand, Harvard is not going to be able to beat Alabama on the football field, are they? They just can't end up competing.
I saw the president of Georgetown. I'm not sure what his name is, but he was questioned. I guess I'm not familiar with Georgetown, but it's a very
it's Father Healy.
Father Healy.
Yeah.
It's a very high academic standing college, and they were questioning some of the the basketball team as far as questioning whether some of those athletes could keep up with the academics. And his response, I thought, was pretty candid and pretty honest. He said something like, "We accept anyone here at Georgetown that will help Georgetown as a whole," and he left it as that, saying that we realize that our main thrust is academics, but if someone can help us in an athletic field, well, then we will accept him. And I'm not sure the full context of how he said that, but to me it was a sense of realism or a sense of honesty about what was going on versus, oh no, we expect our athletes to be in the classroom. And there was a sense of honesty that you don't hear too often.
Maybe that's a first step towards helping with this whole problem. We've been talking a lot about the recruitment problem, and I'm not sure we've offered many solutions to this.
We raised a lot of questions.
We raised a lot of questions, right. I mean, one thing one would hope is that academic administrators and so on would have control of it and would be able to keep the standards of the people under their thumb in line. I mean, that the coaches and so on would be honest and straightforward with the athletes in the recruitment, that people would tell them some of the negative things about what was going to be on campus as well. And I suppose especially finding a way to keep the alumni in line. Maybe if alumni understood that they could hurt the university by violating the policies and principles of the NCAA, maybe they would be more likely to restrain themselves and say, hey, I don't want to get my school in trouble, and get us on probation and not be able to go to the Rose Bowl or something, So maybe that would be a sort of an individual thing on their part. But most of all, I guess we would want to keep in the center of it is the athlete and their own sense of worth and dignity, and try to avoid things that would end up hurting them.
You've been listening to Reflections with your host, theologian Father James Bacik, lecturer and campus minister at the University of Toledo. Joining Father Bacik in this discussion was Brad Rieger, a graduate student in special education at the University of Toledo. The topic of this week's Reflections was the recruitment of college athletes. Comments or questions on this show, or suggestions for future topics, should be sent to Father James Bacik, Catholic Campus Ministry, 2086 Brookdale Drive, Toledo, Ohio 43606. Funding for this program was provided by the Catholic Communications Campaign of the Diocese of Toledo.